Welcome back to the show, my friends. I am your host, Eric Szilagyi. If you've had an uncomfortable experience and you'd like to have it shared here on the show, please get a hold of me at contact.uncomfortable@gmail.com. The world wants to hear your cryptid or UFO experiences, so reach out to me and let's get yours on the next episode of Uncomfortable. If you haven't yet, make sure to like us on Facebook and Instagram, both at Uncomfortable Podcast 65. And once you've had a chance to listen to an episode or two, please make sure to leave us a 5-star rating and review wherever you can. That alone is one of the most important things that you can do to help get this show out in front of more people. And with more people listening, that means more great experiences coming your way. If video is more your thing, then make sure you subscribe to Uncomfortable Podcast on YouTube, where you can get the video version of most shows. If that's where you listen to us, please make sure to click like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you're notified with each new release. Take a minute and check out the Uncomfortable link tree. It's the single best place you can find anything and everything uncomfortable all in one spot. The link for that is down below in the show notes. I think I got a great show for you guys tonight. This is somebody that I've been after for probably got to be going on 4 years now. So if you're ready, let's get into it. So if you will, please give a warm, uncomfortable welcome to Tater Bigstomp. Tater, welcome to Uncomfortable.
Hi, Eric.
How are you, dear?
I'm okay.
You sound a bit trepidatious in your voice.
You know I am.
I know you are. And contrary to the name of the show, I'm going to attempt to make you very comfortable to talk about this experience.
Okay.
Or should I say experiences. Tater, what I met you, it's got to be 4 years now, because it was I think it was at the very beginning of probably the first Bigfoot conference that I went to, where I met you and your husband. It was that could have been West Branch, the year Ron Moorhead was there.
Yes. Yep. I was there then.
Yeah. So,
Mm-hmm.
now to be frank, I think I've gotten more conversation out of your husband from your experience than I have you. And you have teased and tempted me with the idea of coming on here, but much to my surprise, yesterday you presented me with the opportunity, and in the interest of not looking a gift horse in the mouth, we decided to do this in less than 12-hour notice. So
Right. So I didn't back out again. But
exactly,
I shared parts of my story with you at the Ohio Bigfoot Conference
you did, yes.
when, and that's when you were trying to get me to come on. And I'm like, nope.
Before we get into it, I mean, obviously we've been friendly. Your husband and you are supporters of the show. You have been from what I can tell, very early on. But why the change of heart with wanting to discuss what your experience was?
Honestly, I feel like I've let you down 100 times already. And you asked me to type it up for you so you could just read it. And I never did. And
Well, it can't just be about me.
no, it's all your fault. No, I'm just kidding. No, I just every time I listen to a podcast, which is often, I'm like, I just have to do it. I have to do it. And I don't know. And then my husband's gone right now. So I just thought, well, this is a time when I partly wish he was sitting beside me, but I partly want to feel better just braving it myself. So
Gotcha.
I just decided, what the heck? I was going to be home alone all day. So
All right. Well, like I said, I've gotten bits and pieces from you, and a few more bits and pieces from your husband. So why don't you just take the reins here and walk us into how it all started?
Okay. Um, I never had any thoughts about Bigfoot in my life ever. Um, when Tad came into my life, it was now my husband. He had told me once that he had an experience when he was a child of seeing like a little monkey figure out his back window at night, and he always felt like it was a young Bigfoot or baby Bigfoot. And I was, I love him. I believed him, but didn't really ever give it any thought.
Yeah.
And Chad got me into hunting. I'd hunted a little bit, like when I was in high school, but really I wasn't a hunter. So Chad was all into hunting. So he got us into hunting. And I didn't know there was anything to be scared of in the woods. Very naive. And we just started going into the woods more and more. And in 2011, he and I went out really early to, um, it's Camp Grayling. It's where like military trainings are held.
That's where my
Um,
dad started out at. Yeah.
okay. So we were out there very early, and Tad had put a tree stand up for me, and we were bow hunting. Um, went out before dark. We drove down this trail to a loop. At the end, it's like a dead end, but it's like a little tiny circle you can turn around in though. But it's a 2-track and it's rough, and like your truck gets scratched driving down it. So it's really not ever traveled. And Tad parked his Tahoe out there, and we got out, and I went on one side of the trail and he went on the other. And it was dark, and we found our ways in and climbed up in the tree stand and sat there. I had a book, I had coffee, um, a knife, apples, all this stuff. It was interesting day. So anyway, I'm up in my tree stand. I'm hooked in with my harness, and I had a tow rope to pull my bow up with. And it gets light, and it's just the most beautiful day ever. There's no wind. Um, so I was like, well, they're not; those deer aren't going to smell those apples. Mind you, I'm pretty new, and back then we could bait, so we had apples out, and so I pulled an apple out of my backpack and I started like carving on it with my knife. And then I was just like, I was bored. And
What, you were carving a
I
figure
just,
out, or were you just cutting pieces off?
I was just cutting little pieces off, dropping them, hoping that some scent of the apples would bring me a deer.
Okay.
And I ended up tying, this is embarrassing, but I tied the apple to my bowstring that I pull my bow up to the tree
Mhm.
stand with. And I was just like swinging it back and forth, like, I'll make the scent of an apple. Sorry.
Hey, I've heard of things less.
Again, I'm naive and rather silly. So
What time of year is this?
it was fall, so November.
Okay.
And it was beautiful. It was a beautiful, beautiful day. And the leaves were perfect. In fact, I have a picture on my Facebook from that day of how beautiful the sky was against the colorful trees. Um, anyway, so we were out there for a while, a couple hours, probably around 9. All of a sudden, like an owl shoots out of the tree above me, scared the crap out of me. No big deal. A little while later, this really gross smell comes along. And in my head, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to see a bear, all excited, not even thinking of the fact that a bear is going to climb a tree and try to kill me. But I've heard that bears are stinky. So a bear's going to come up here. A bear's going to come up here. But then the smell went away, and it was just there for a minute or two. It was weird. Um, I'll mention that I could see the very top of my husband's Tahoe from my tree stand through the leaves. So it wasn't super far away.
Mhm.
Um, I think. As I'm sitting there, at one point, I thought I saw a very small face of a deer peeking at me through the ferns. And the ferns are really high out there, like to my chest at least,
Okay.
which just seems really super high compared to normal, like ferns I've seen in other places. Um,
Wild, at least. Yeah.
yeah. So, and then it was gone. Um, Probably around 11ish. Well, I'm not sure what time, but a little bit later after the smell and everything. Um, the military planes started practicing and they were dropping bombs. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it was so loud. You could feel it in your chest, the rumbling, and it was just crazy. And we should not have been in there. Which when we finally left, we found out that the roads were blocked off. We got in there before they closed the roads,
Oh,
apparently. So
Lord.
because yeah. So I mean, we weren't seeing anything being blown up or anything, but it was just super loud and the planes were just insanely crazy. And Tad was off in his tree stand and I'm in mine and we're texting like, holy, should we get out of here? Because again, we're down this two
You
track.
could
We're not parked on a regular spot.
were you able to feel the concussive
Oh,
the
it was,
concussive nature of it?
oh yeah, it was insane. It was just really insane. So I was kind of afraid I was going to get blown to bits. But I mean, I don't know exactly how far away they were from us, but the planes were flying over us. So as that's happening and Tad and I are texting, I look off to my right and I see two people walking. And I was mad and I'm like, oh, God, I'm trying to deer hunt here. And again, with these bombs, there's not going to be anything moving. But
Right.
I was so annoyed. I'm like, are you kidding me? I'm hunting and there's somebody walking in over there by me. And one was bigger than the other. So I assumed it was like a father and a son. And I assumed they were bird hunting because Tad wanted to bird hunt as well. He said if he doesn't see anything with it, if the deer, he might just go for a walk and go bird hunting. So I'm assuming it was up two people. But then I just kept watching them and I was like, that's so weird. It's so weird. So I texted Tad and said, I just saw two big black deer. One was bigger than the other, but they didn't have any ears or they had a lump on the back of their neck.
Why, if you were looking at them and thinking that it was a father and son or an
Yeah,
adult and a child,
it doesn't,
what prompted you to text your husband that they were deer?
I have no idea. I have no idea. And I didn't think about that again until later in January. So that will all come back into play later.
Okay.
I have no idea where that came from, but somehow the people were deer. So Tad and I went down. We had lunch in the car or in the Tahoe, and he said, "Well, with these bombs, we're not going to see anything, obviously. So I'm just going to go bird hunting. You want to come with me?" And I'm like, "Okay, fine." So we start walking up the two track, like from the way we came in, and then we probably went about half mile. And I was like, "No, no, I'm going back to my tree stand." And so I turned around and I went back by myself, got back in the tree stand.
Can I ask what prompted your decision just to be like, nope, this isn't what I want to do. I'm going to go back.
Because I am gung ho to get a deer.
Oh, okay.
I really, and I have this drive, like I want to be in the woods. I still have this and it drives my husband crazy sometimes. So I'm like, I'm not going to waste my time walking around. I don't want to shoot a bird. Like
Yeah.
that's not very fun. Maybe it is. I don't know. I've never done it. So I went back at my tree stand and it wasn't very long, maybe 30 or 40 minutes. And this is another embarrassing, silly thing I did. Um, when my dad would smoke, or when my dad would hunt, if he ever got a deer, he would smoke a cigar. And
Not so
so I
silly.
was like, I'm gonna smoke a cigar. And I had clove cigars. They're like little
Mm.
They're shaped like cigarettes.
Yeah.
So I had these clove cigars in my backpack because I'm so sure I'm going to get this deer and get to celebrate. And I'm like, well, screw it. So I lit one. Again, the bombs had kind of slowed down, but I mean, we weren't going to see any deer. I didn't care. I'd already been swinging an apple on a string. So I was smoking this clove cigar and I'm just dinking around trying to blow smoke rings. Again, yeah, I was seeing if I could do it because I'm not a smoker. So I was just seeing what I could do. And as I'm doing that, I look up and I see Tad, and he's got his tree stand because his is a climber, and he's way off, like probably 300 yards away, walking through the woods. Like he decided he wasn't going to bird hunt either. He decided to move his tree stand because it's a climber, and I see him way, way, way far off, and he texts me and says, "I just moved." I said, "I saw you," and which I was surprised. I could just see a little bit of him, but I knew it was him. And all of a sudden there was like a big bang on his truck. And he said, "Are you back at the truck?" And I said, "No, are you?" And I was confused because I had just seen him
Mm-hmm.
really far away, and the truck was to the other side of me. Um, and I wish I could remember better if it sounded like a car door shutting. I'm pretty sure the car was locked. It just sounded like something smacked the back of the truck. But I remember Tad and I texted about it, and I'm like, I can see the roof. I don't see anything. And just a little bit after that, I thought I heard movement coming in behind me. So I turned around, and my tree was probably like that wide behind me. And I was in a double tree stand, so I had my backpack sitting there. So I was turning really quietly around to look behind the tree, hanging my head out, and I saw something. And I'm like, what is that? What is that? I was like really, really confused. And I kept staring and staring and staring. And I think I was talking out loud. And I just, if it wasn't out loud, it was in my head. And I kept saying, don't blink, Trace, don't blink. And I just stared and stared and stared. And I don't know how long, it was just a minute or two. And all of a sudden, whatever I was staring at just kind of changed. And I was looking at tree leaves again, colorful tree leaves. And as quick as that happened, right below me, there was a grouse on the ground, right at the base of my tree, doing that injured
Mm-hmm.
thing it does, making
Yeah.
all this noise and clutter, and like snapped me out of whatever I was doing, whatever I was staring at. And really weird. Anyway, we sat there for a little while longer. Like,
Oh, well, no, wait a minute.
that's about it. Like,
No,
seriously.
no, now, wait a minute. Um, put yourself back at that moment,
When the bird's going off
just prior to that,
I
when you're looking at
and saying,
something.
don't blink.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What are you looking at?
I don't know.
What is it?
I have no idea. Like, I can't, I mean, I would love to be like, yeah, it was some kind of a creature. I have no idea what I was looking at. I was looking because I heard a noise. But then something was there and I kept,
Something caught your attention, though.
yeah. And then I was like, what is that? What is that? And then I was like, don't blink. But I don't remember. I don't.
I mean, I guess what I'm getting at here is,
I need hypnosis.
did you? What's a good way to ask this? Did you see something physical that you just couldn't wrap your head around? And
I don't remember. I just remember saying, don't blink, don't blink, don't blink. And then kind of being snapped out of it. And this bird is below my tree stand.
Jesus, I got chills.
Yeah, I know. I could have, like the bird, I could have taken my arrow out of my bow and like punked and taken out the bird and been like, haha, Tad, I got something. But I was just like, it is so weird. And so that's all. That's it from that day, that until later. Like
That is so strange because
when,
a grouse will do that when it
yeah,
believes there's a threat present.
yeah. And where had that grouse come from? Like, like I well, I can't say I know. Like, could the grouse have been in the tree and then fluttered out of the tree and went to the base of the tree? I don't feel like that's what it was. Like, I don't know. When Tad and I went to leave that day, he got to the truck before me, and we both kind of looked at the truck, and it was locked, and we couldn't see anything on the truck. So we went to leave there, and like I said, the roads were blocked off. Whoops. And we just were not supposed to be in there. And so obviously it was an uneventful, well, at least no deer day.
Okay, so let me take you back to the moment that you guys heard the sound from the truck. Did it sound like it was being struck with a hard object? Did it just
No,
sounded more like something just slapped the side of the truck?
probably. That's what I'm thinking. Yeah.
And how you said you could see the top of it from where you were.
Just a little bit of the top of the truck. Yeah.
Can you any idea guesstimate how far away you and your husband were from the truck in either direction?
I was probably only about 100 yards, maybe. I kind of went in from the truck and then back a little bit, probably 100 yards. And Tad was probably where he was hunting was probably about 300 yards,
Hmm.
maybe further.
So the drive home after you get past the road closure and you get past the idea that you were way too close to a
Yeah.
simulated bombing run.
Hmm.
Uh, um, what's the conversation between you and your husband?
I know we talked about whatever the noise was on the truck, and we talked about the bombs, and I did. I did say something like something weird happened out there. Like I was looking back and then everything changed. And then there was a grouse. So I told him that, but I had no idea like that there's anything weird in this world. I completely naive to all this stuff that I now know after what 15 years of doing this or 14 years of reading and researching and
You
following
you
whatever.
know me, so you know that I tend to take things and then pick at them.
Hmm.
Um, your statement that you just made, everything changed. Dissect that for me.
About how I didn't believe or like didn't know about anything
No, at the
or
moment,
about
the grouse and what you
the
saw
grouse.
just
Just how
prior.
whatever I could, whatever I was looking at when I heard that noise, like the tree branches were kind of down, like I'm looking down and there's all the colorful leaves and they're beautiful. And
Mhm.
there's something behind them. And I'm seeing something, but I don't know what it is. And it's almost like everything just got blurry or something. And I kept saying, don't blink, don't blink. And then, all of a sudden it was just tree leaves again. And nothing was blurry, and there was a grouse below me.
The words you use, everything got blurry, and then do you remember? Do you remember any kind of a physiological effect? Any
Mm-mm.
strange feeling at the time
No,
that was going on, other than confusion?
nothing.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
All right, where do we go from here?
Okay. So,
Can we, for the listeners, can we give a generalized location of we're in the state of Michigan?
here's the
Um,
hand.
yep.
Um, is it backwards on your screen? I don't know.
No.
So I live about here, and Grayling is just a little south. We were in Waters, Michigan.
Okay.
Um, it was about a 40-minute drive from our house to where we were hunting. And you can look up Camp Grayling online, and like there's the gates and the fences, and sometimes we're out there and you can see like the big army rigs and stuff, and the people doing their trainings and
Mhm. So we're
anyway.
in the upper part of the lower peninsula of Michigan,
Yes. Hmm.
north of the north of the state forest, uh, Manistee National Forest.
Okay. Yep. Hmm. So we hunt out there a few more times. The kids went. Tad and my daughter sat in that tree stand. Um, I took my son out and we'd ride around, and my son has cerebral palsy, so he was little at the time, and so we would go, and I would go around with him, and we'd go to just like easy in and easy out spots, and we'd sit and hope that maybe we'd see a deer or even a coyote or something, so my son could get something. um, and we spent a lot of time out there, and it came to the end of the season, and I don't remember anything else happening. Well, one other thing. Okay, but it wasn't when we were hunting. We were going out, and I wanted to see what is like my app when I'm hunting. Let's say I'm facing this way. That my apples or my bait is down in front of me this way, but where I saw the stuff was this way. So I wanted to see, because technically the main road we come in on is also this way, and I wanted to see what was back there between that road and my tree stand, because I had never walked in any deeper than my tree stand. Um, and so Tad pulled down another 2-track that would have like basically taken us a little further in from the main road toward our 2-track. And we were just kind of wandering around, and I thought, well, I want to see how far it is to cut through from this side of the woods to that tree stand. And I started exploring, and there was like birch trees, and it was really pretty. Giant ferns again. And I was walking ahead, and I'm just kind of like wandering through, following what I'm assuming are deer trails. And Chad started yelling for me, um, from back where he was. And he goes, come and look at this. And he showed me like a lump in the dirt by a stump that was pushed over. Um, I'm trying to really remember. And I thought he was just being really weird. And he's like, get over here, get over here. Don't go wandering off by yourself. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Again, naive. And he said, does that not look like a knee print to you? I'm like, a knee print? What the? Again, a knee print? Seriously? Who's going to look? We're just out there having fun. Like, let's not look for knee prints, you know? So he thought it looked like a knee print. And he goes, look, you can kind of see, like, I don't know. He just felt like it was a knee print at the stump that was kind of pulled up and tipped over. And he's like, just don't go wandering off by yourself. Let's go. And he had us leave. I was like, okay, whatever. Again, I just thought it was weird, but I didn't think anything of it. So we go through the whole hunting season. No deer. I'm really disappointed. And so at the end in December, after like muzzleloader season and rifle season, they open up bow season again in Michigan. So I could still go out and I could get a deer through December 31st. So on December 31st, Tad and I went. I had to beg him because there was snow on the ground. Can we please, 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 please go back out there? Oh, there's one more thing I forgot. Okay, let me backtrack one time. Toward the end of winter, after the rifle season was done, we did park in that spot again. Tad and I did the place where he thought he felt like he saw like a knee print. And we walked in that way to get the tree stand. And we had our dogs with us. I had two dogs, and they were in the back of the truck. It had a cab thing on the back. Um, and when we first got there to let the dogs out, one of them took off like just like insane, and we were like, "What is going on?" We thought maybe it saw a deer or something. And then the other one stayed pretty close to us. So we got out there and we had the tree stand, and I had the ladders like on me, and Tad had the big piece strapped to his back. And our one dog was by us the whole time, but the one that had run off had come back. And I don't know why, but Tad picked up a tree branch and he went to break it so he could throw it for the dogs. And I don't know why he did that because he had all that heavy weight on him. But he did. And when he hit that tree, we heard another sound farther off behind us. I'm like, that's weird. Whatever.
What was the sound?
Probably another, like hitting another tree.
Interesting. So
Yeah.
like
So,
like
like,
a knock and a response.
yeah, kind of. And that's not what we were going for at all. Like he hit it to break it so we'd have two pieces of this big stick for the dogs. So each dog could chase a stick. So that happened, but then now it's the last day, December 31st, and we decide we're going out there again to hunt, but we're going to take one of those pop-up coops to hunt in because the tree stand is gone. And there's snow on the ground, not a ton, but so we decided we
Pop
would
up
park
coop. You're talking about
like a hunting
a deer
blind.
blind.
Yeah, those little things
Okay.
that you just pop them up,
Yep.
Kind of unfold them. Um, so we were going to do this in bow hunt, but we weren't going to go all the way down the two track. We were going to park at this other weird spot and walk in to this little area and just see. And I had to like beg because Tad's like, oh, seriously, hunting season's over. And I'm like, no, 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 I want a deer. So we get out there really early and we've got our headlamps on, and I get dressed at home for hunting. Tad is worried about the scent of the dogs. And so he always puts on his hunting clothes at the back of the truck when we get out there. So I was just like standing there waiting for him. And when we first opened the door, I heard like a howl off to my right, kind of, kind of far away, but I just, a coyote howl is what I'm assuming it was. And I'd gotten used to that 'cause in my first year hunting, we heard the coyotes a lot every time it was getting close to being dark. Um, and so we get out, and Tad has his stuff on now. So we start heading up. I got my bow and like a little stool and the tent, and I think he had his bow with him as well. And we were just not very far in front of the Tahoe. We're facing in, and we're going to walk in and turn to where we were going to set up the coop. And it was very early. It was probably like maybe 6 a.m. And something screamed at us from the side, from this side. And it was like just this major, loud scream, howl thing. And I haven't talked about it in a long time. And I just remember we both froze. And Tad said, "Did you hear that?" And I responded with something lippy that I won't say because I don't want to cuss. Um, and I like it kind of like I didn't take my breath away, but you could feel it. It went through like I felt like I had goosebumps on my eyes. Um, like everything just was like whoa, and you could feel it go through you.
Oh
Um,
my God. Just hold your thought there.
okay,
When you said goosebumps on your eyes,
yeah,
that gave me chills because when
it
I heard
scary.
when I heard what I heard while interviewing the witch, I got chills on every inch of my body. And what was really strange about that was like I had all this recording equipment there. And it was so loud that I whipped my headphones off. She was sitting right across from me, and we both looked in the direction that sound came from. She asked me, "Did you hear that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, what the hell was that?" But yet after I went back and I loaded up the show onto my computer, that sound where it should have been, all there was a little whoo off in the background. But you want to talk about like an instantaneous chill and like disorientation. Had no idea what the hell was going on at that point. Sorry, that
No,
when you,
yeah,
when
it
you
was.
said goosebumps on your eyeballs, it's
Yeah,
like
like I don't know, it just like
yeah, but it's the same.
it was just such a shock to because you could feel it. So Tad zoom is like he's in the truck, and I feel like I'm still standing there.
He left you.
Like we were not far in front of the truck, but I'm not. It all happened so fast. But he's like, "Did you hear that?" And I'm like, "Oh, fucking, whatever." And um, and then all of a sudden it was like, "Voop!" And he's in the truck, and I'm like, so I'm like hustling. I threw my stuff in the back of the truck. I get in. I'm like, "What was that?" And we're like freaking out. And he's throwing it into reverse and flying down the thing. And I'm like, "Wait, where are you going? What are you doing? I want to know what that was." Like, and he's like, "No, we are out of here. We're out of here." And so he started going a different way. And I'm like, "Well, I want to hunt." Here's little stubborn brat, Tracy.
What is wrong with you?
I know. I'm like this naughty little kid. Um, and so we ended up going back to this other spot, but he was so uncomfortable. We went in and it was still, the sun was just starting to come up. And we put up the tent, the coop someplace else, and we sat there for about 10 minutes, and he goes, "We gotta go, I can't, we're not doing this." I'm like, "Seriously? Fine." And like I just feel like he what had some idea what it was. I was clueless. I was just like, I
That's
keep going back to that word, naive.
that's what I was just
Completely
going to ask you.
clueless.
Your desire to continue to hunt,
Yeah.
you've got this obsession. You want to get your
Uh-huh.
deer,
Hmm.
but
Yep. But Tad was very uncomfortable. So we went back to the truck and I said, "Let's just drive back out there now because now it's getting light and just see if there's any tracks. I need to know what that was." So he drives back in there and he wouldn't get out of the truck, but we didn't see anything. I don't think I got out of the truck either. But um, so we were home. We were back at our house by like 8:30 in the morning. The kids were still in bed. And they get up and "I thought you guys were hunting today." And we told him about it. So that whole day, like we were using the internet and Tad was looking up different screams and things and just trying to find stuff. And Tad kept saying, like, "I think it was a Bigfoot. I think it was a Bigfoot." And I'm like, not believing it. And then he played some other sounds. And all of a sudden, I remembered that day when I saw the two big black deer.
mm-hmm.
And I pulled up my phone and I said, "Remember that day?" With that, and I showed him the text, and we both still had the text. And I'm like, they were people, though. I remember my first thought was that it was a father and a son that were hunting.
Yeah.
Why did I text you that they were big like deer? I said, "That is so weird." And he's like, "Remember something hit the truck?" And I'm like, "There was a smell, too." You remember how he kept saying, "Don't blink, Trace, don't blink."
Yeah.
And I told you this. So all of a sudden, like everything, my whole world is just like, "Are you kidding me? Is there really such a thing as a Bigfoot and a Sasquatch? Could I have seen two Bigfoots? Maybe. I don't know. To this day, I don't know." But that got me obsessed with all of that. And then I just started messing around, and Tater Bigstomp was born that summer. And because people thought I was nuts, anybody I told. So I just, you know, I'm a teacher and I don't need people criticizing me, although most people know I have an interest, but they don't know the story. So I just keep myself as Tater Bigstomp just to keep the privacy. And
Right.
that's how that happened.
So you nosedive into the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And would you say that was 2011?
Yeah. Summer. Hmm. Yeah. And we hunted again the next year, but we didn't hunt in waters anymore.
A conscious decision not to go back to that place.
I would like to. In fact, just even this year, I said, "Do we want to try going back to waters this year?" And Ted's like, "Nope, nope, nope. We hardly ever go out there anymore." Um, for a while, once we started like really researching and when I really started believing, we tried doing like this gifting thing. Like we would drive out there to the area where we were screamed at and put food out there sometimes or marbles and stuff. And my son had a trail cam that he won from somewhere. So we put that out there and we went back like 3 days later and it was gone. And so was all the food and everything. And we used to stack these rocks. There was some big rocks that were in an area where the ferns were always all matted down. And so we would kind of like stack the rocks and we'd come back and every time the rocks would be knocked down. Um, we did that for like a whole summer. But there's a lot of ticks out there, so we don't like a lot of ticks. So we don't really go out there too much.
I hate those things.
Yeah, they're disgusting.
Nature's vampire. Ugh.
So we started hunting in Pigeon River State Forest, which is outside of Vanderbilt, a little bit north of Gaylord. And again, naive. There's no Bigfoots. There, the Bigfoot is in waters because there
So
must only be two, right?
so you've had these experiences up to this point,
Mm-hmm.
and your brain is still not
Mm-hmm.
still not wrapped around Bigfoot.
Right. Not anywhere else. It just is in that one place. It had to have been just in waters, is the way I thought.
Okay.
So we started hunting in Pigeon River. And some of this, it might just be just stuff, this normal hunting stuff. Um, the first day of bow season, I was sitting on the edge of like a viewing area, and there's elk in Pigeon River. Elk were introduced in the early 1900s out there. And now there's like a herd of maybe 800 or 900, and you can hunt elk up there now if you get a permit.
They have a
Um,
lottery, don't they?
yeah, it's a lottery. So I'm sitting just in the long grass on the ground. Tad's farther off in the woods in his climber stand. And these two young bull elk came out. And they were just beautiful and they were sparring in front of me and I was videotaping. I was so excited. I was like just dying because it was like this is bliss for me. I'm like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. Um, and then I started hearing movement coming behind me and the elk would stop and they'd look almost at me. I was in camo, kind of pretty well blended into the side of the long grass that I was sitting in up against the trees. And but I didn't have any cover over me, no coop, just my camo clothes. Um, but I kept hearing this noise behind me. So as I'm videotaping, I'm panning my camera back behind me, waiting, and I keep thinking this bigger elk is going to come out. And then the elk would kind of spar for a minute more, and then you'd hear some more movement behind me, and the elk would stop and look, and all of a sudden the elk stopped and trotted off, and they were like, "What the heck?" So I kept video behind me to see what came out, like whatever was moving behind me, because I just assumed it was a bigger elk, but nothing ever came out. So I always wonder about that. Now I wonder about it. Back then I was just like, whatever, elk went away. But whatever it was, spooked the two younger elk. Um, We hunted in quite a few spots in the same general area in Pigeon River. Um, Tad put up a tree stand for me. I don't know if this was my second year or my third year hunting, but it was again in Pigeon River, and it was pretty easy to get to. We'd park on a 2-track, and it was real close to the viewing area, so it was very exciting. But the viewing area, there was be people that would drive through this loop all the time and try to see the elk
Yeah.
while I'm deer hunting, and so we just hunted out there quite a bit. I remember one day I went out after school, and I had actually seen a little buck that day, and I was pretty excited. And then later I saw a bull elk come through, big bull elk. And I'm in a tree stand, and it was way out in front of me. And I always stayed till dark because the things start moving right before dark. So I'd always stay till it got dark and then get out of my tree stand and walk up. And I was by myself this day. Um, I don't do that anymore. I'm
No.
out before dark now. Um, and as I'm walking up, you go like I have to go over like a down tree. Um, and then you just walk a little bit and it gets a little bushy on two sides and it goes up a little hill and then there I am to the truck. Um, Something was walking kind of beside me and I'm like, ooh, is it that deer? It could be that buck. Or is it that elk? And I'd hear it. And I was walking pretty quickly. And I remember I forgot, I was so excited to get to the woods because after school it gets dark so early and like I didn't have a lot of time to hunt that I didn't even change into my boots. I had my school shoes on and I was slipping on the wet leaves. And um, but something was like going beside me, like, and when I got to the top I texted Tad or called him and said something was coming up the woods beside me. I'm going to stand here, I can see better in the on the trail now that I'm not in the woods. I have enough light that I could still shoot if it comes out of the woods. So I remember I stood there for 10 minutes and waited, but nothing came out of the woods. So again, this is before I ever knew that something might parallel you through the woods.
Hmm.
So I don't know, in my head it was a deer or an elk. But then like years later, I'm like, oh, that happens. I remember when. So I'm just mentioning that. Um,
Well, I had the same thing.
yeah.
Um, and I was at first when I heard it, I was on a piece of property I didn't have permission to hunt, and I wasn't hunting. I just that that part of the landscape was so interesting. I was hunting the property beside it, and I would always look at it, and I was like, one of these days, I just want to walk over there and just check it out. And then I had steps behind me, and when I would stop, it would stop, and I was like, oh shit, it's the landowner. He caught me on his property, and I never turned around. I didn't have my weapon. I left my weapon back at the tree stand or at the bucket, my seat, and I started and stopped a couple of times and it would do the same thing. But by time I was getting almost back to where my weapon was, I was fully convinced that I had a massive buck that was following me back to my deer stand or my hunting area. The hair on the back of my neck is standing up. I'm breathing labored. I'm excited because behind me I know I got this trophy buck. And I turn around and there's nothing there. And a very short time after that, I leave the woods. I walk along the tree line through the field back to my car. And it's something is walking right beside me on my left side. Sounds like it's only 10 feet into the tree line.
Hmm.
And it walks beside me. And I've got an Olight flashlight that's just lighting up the night. It was by this time it was like right at the close of hunting. So it wasn't super dark. But I'm shining my light in there and There's nothing. I'm looking for one leaf to be like floating back down to the ground because it got kicked up, or I'm looking for a branch on a low piece of low lying brush to be like wiggling back and forth like something just walked past it. Um, but again, at this point, it's this damn deer, and 2/3 of the way I get back to the car, the motion light on the back of the residence, the back of their house recognizes me, and the light kicks on. And from that point on, not another sound. 2/3 of the way back to the car and it stops. Never did see anything.
Right.
But something was walking there. And at that point, I mean, I've been into this stuff since I was a kid. But at that point, it never occurred to me that it could have been that. It was in my brain, it was a deer.
Mm-hmm.
But that hunting property is a 10-minute drive from the homestead of the gentleman and the daughters that had the experiences in my episode 2 and 3. 10-minute drive. So very close to that place.
Okay. Want more?
Yes.
All right. Another time, Tad and I went out on like a Saturday afternoonish, maybe 2. Just we could have an evening hunt to that same place where I had the tree stand now in Pigeon River. And he always uses his climber stand. And he said, I'll be back another 200 yards. So he went further down this trail, and I'm just off to the left a little bit. And I'm never sure because I've never walked back farther out there. How far he went, like, or where exactly he was sitting. So we were sitting there, and it was still bow season. I remember all of a sudden I heard whack, and I look in front of me, and there's like pieces of bark falling off a tree. And I'm like, oh my God, he's that close to me. I thought he must have just shot at a deer, and the arrow went through a deer that I didn't see. I don't know why I didn't see it, but I always have I can always rationalize everything. And so I text him, like, did you shoot something? Because I heard the arrow hit the tree, and I saw this little bits of bark fly off. And he's like, no. And he goes, you wouldn't be able to see me where I am. I'm like, okay, that was weird. And it happened twice. And the second time, I was like, for sure, he had to have just gotten a deer because I heard another whack against a tree, and it wasn't him. I don't know what it was. Maybe a rock hit a tree, maybe something else. I didn't see anything, just little bits of bark fly, when you hear it. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
So
So
that happened.
So you weren't hearing a wood knock per se.
No, I didn't. I don't think it was a wood knock.
That's
I
interesting.
literally
That's
thought
an
it must have
interesting
been.
thought that it would have been a rock.
Yeah, I thought it was his arrow, and I thought, dude,
Yeah.
you just hit the tree right by me. It wasn't. I don't know. So that was one weird thing that had happened. In the maybe probably February or March, the following year, we had left the tree stand out there, and the DNR will come and take them if they find them. And so we went out to get it, and well, that was the year we took the sled because there was still snow. We must have had the tree stand there another year. We went back another year in the spring, and that time my son was with us, and there was the two bent trees that were along the trail. They're on my Facebook page as the main picture of the two trees that are aimed down. They're just bent down.
Bent like in an arch, or
No, they were snapped off, but they
They
were
were-
right beside the trail. So those, if you look at my Tater Bigstomp Facebook account, that's the picture that's on there. Is those two trees? They were there, and then we wandered through and we saw some other things. I posted a video of some like weird. There was like an arch, and it was held down with like another tree, like, but it was also wound a little bit. It was weird. I always call the trees the arches. I call them like fling trees, like fing, like a cartoon character. You know, a bunny
Yeah.
walks up to the trap and then it goes flying through the air.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like a
Silly.
snare.
Yeah. Yeah. So there was just that stuff. Well, that stuff's on my Facebook. I posted that stuff, but um, I think that's it for that side of the street. And then we started going to the opposite side. This two track comes off of Main Road, Sturgeon Valley Road, which goes in from Vanderbilt into Pigeon River State Forest. And it's paved there. But there's the two track to one side with the viewing area. And then on the other side, there was this other two track. And sometimes people put campers right at the front of it, right off of Sturgeon Valley Road. And you go down this trail quite a ways. And there's this giant, really steep hill. And then it goes right back up. And so we would go out there and we drive down this really steep hill and park in the valley part. There was like a little area that we would park, and that goes into another viewing area that the DNR, like the DNR plows them, plants them for the elk. But this one's not necessarily like a viewing area where people can drive by it because it's really hard to get to.
Mhm.
It's a beautiful area, and you walk into this big open field, and in the center of this field there's like an island of trees. It's a pretty big island of trees. And then but the field goes all the way around it, and then it goes off into another field, and like it's beautiful. And so we call that our island, the island forest. Let's go hunt the island.
Fairly sizable, then, I assume.
Yeah, and just absolutely beautiful. And there we would see lots of elk in there. We'd see lots of deer. We would go out there quite a bit. One day we had both of our kids with us. And again, my son with his cerebral palsy, we help him to get out there. I mean, he walks, he drives, he does all this stuff, but he really is like uses one hand. So we get him set up in a pop up tent, and he has like a shooting rack for his. He and my daughter could use guns because they're tribal.
Mhm.
And so during this season, they can hunt with a rifle when I have to use my bow and my husband has to use the bow. So Nate set up with his gun, and we moved around the other side of the island where I normally sit if I'm with Nate because he doesn't want me to be in the tent with him. But just
Independent.
I always stay really close. And he also has epilepsy, so I stay really close, but just in case. So we went around this island part, and Katie's not very far away, but she's facing the other direction. And so she can see into the woods here, and she can see like down really far into the other field. And Tad had gone off on his own, and he's going to go way out with his tree stand on his back. And I'm just going to be somewhere near the kids, not in a coop. I was just going to be on the ground. Well, getting Katie set up, she says, "Mom, look, there's a deer right there." I mean, we were barely there. We were still making noise getting set up. And so I get Nate's attention, and my son pops it, and it whoop, goes off into the woods. So Tad wasn't even set up in his tree stand yet when Nate shot his deer.
So he hit it.
Yeah, he hit the deer. And but it went into the woods, out of the field into the woods. So I get Katie set up the rest of the way, and I just kind of hang out for a while. And I'm like, well, I'm going to go back into the woods this way. Don't shoot for a little bit till I get back there. And
Don't kill mom.
yeah, don't kill mom. So then I'm in the woods further back, and I'm trying to like look for this deer because I don't know how far that deer went, and I don't find it. And I end up like paralleling the field down quite a ways to where it kind of like bottlenecks a little bit, and then it kind of opens up into another little field. And I was back there, and I remember I was kind of coming out, but I had to be careful because the way Nate was shooting would have been towards that area if Nate tried to take another one. Um, so Katie started texting me, but I could see a deer. There was a deer there, and it was coming in. So I'm like on my hands and knees, kind of just like squatting and trying to slowly inch forward because I could see a deer. And I'm like, I might be able to get this with my bow if I stay real quiet. So Katie's texting and she's like, Mom, come back, come back. Something's getting in the tree stand. Something's trying to get in my coop. And I'm like, no, there's not. you know. And I'm like, shh, just be quiet. There's a deer by me. I'm waiting. And so I'm texting and I'm like, Nate, whatever you do, don't shoot this in this direction right now because I'm probably going to be coming out just a little bit further. Um, so I waited and my daughter's just like, Mom, please, please. So she's calling and she's whispering, please, Mom, I'm scared. I'm scared. Please come back. And I'm like, my God, I go, just a second. Something's throwing things at me. I was like imagining like little squirrels. There's like little pieces of bark hitting me as I'm
Really?
sitting there watching this deer. But she's really frantic. And so finally I'm like, Nate, absolutely put your gun down because I'm getting up and I'm going to come through the field because Katie's frantic. So I come out and she's like, Mom, something's coming in the tent. And I'm like, I can see the tent. There's nothing in it. There's nothing by you, honey. Maybe it's a mouse. Don't panic. Maybe it's a mouse or a shrew or something. You're fine. So I go back and
You
get
you could
her. And
you could see her hunting blind perfectly from where you were at. You could see
I
it.
mean, it was far. It was a couple hundred yards down, but she was right on the edge of the field on the opposite
Yeah.
side because it's all this open field. So, I mean, I couldn't see the backside of it, but I went down and got her and she was freaked out and she was scared. And she said,
How old is she at this point?
mm, maybe 13 at the most.
Okay.
Um, I don't remember what year that was. Although she still talks about the year I let her brother shoot her deer because she's the one that saw it and I pointed it out to her brother. So anyway, she's freaked out. So we pack up. She's ready to go. And she said it was so weird. Like the trees came out into the field and they were like dancing.
What?
She says, I don't get it, Mom. The trees came out into the field and were dancing. And she was just weirded right out. So we went home. And we never did find the deer that day. Ted went out and found it the next morning. The
The
coyotes hadn't
trees
gotten it
came
yet.
out into the field
Mm-hmm.
and were dancing.
Yep. And like she loved like finding Bigfoot and stuff. Both the kids did when they were younger. And now they're like, oh God, how embarrassing. But she's always held on to she goes, I know that weird stuff is out there because the day the trees came out into the field and were dancing.
How
And this was during this
strange.
time where she's freaking out that something was trying to come into her tent. So I don't know.
See that kind of stuff. Did she ever talk about like well, obviously she was panicked, right?
Yeah, she was panicked. She didn't like it.
These kind of things always make me go back to somehow having our perception altered.
Mm-hmm.
You looked behind your tree, you saw something you couldn't reconcile, and then all of a sudden everything went back to normal, except now you have a grouse that's acting wounded at the base of your tree.
Mm-hmm.
You don't really have any good reconciliation as far as how to describe what you saw.
Right.
Your daughter sees trees come out of the woods and they're dancing around. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people rip on Ron Moorhead for his quantum Bigfoot theories, and but when you start taking into consideration the possibility that these things operate on a different frequency, or can produce a frequency that is outside of our range of perception. I don't think I say that, but then I see, I forget who it was, had a video of something that it was a female researcher, maybe out in the Pacific Northwest. Um, Kathy Strain, maybe it was, had the video where it looked like the predator jumping out of a tree down onto the ground of
Oh,
the.
Barb Shoop.
Is that who it was?
I,
Shoot.
yeah. I'm not sure
You
if I
know,
said her name right.
so I mean, I've been under the theory that if these things can produce a different vibration or a different frequency, whether it be through infrasound or some kind of vocal capability, that they may be able to, because just the idea of something being able to go cloaked seems so insanely science fiction. But the idea that they could affect our perception of what we see because of vibration or frequency would make more sense to me. But she actually got that on video, so I guess that kind of defeats my hypothesis, I guess. But it's so strange that the the oddness of what some people perceive. How do they, if it was even that? I mean, trees, I don't think are known for moving, let alone,
Getting up and coming into the field.
yeah.
Hmm.
Um, how strange.
Right. Um, Another time, um, Nate, my son, and I were out hunting, and it was the day before rifle season started, and Nate had a yeah, Nate still had his gun. I believe he had his gun, and I had my bow. He might have had his crossbow. I can't remember now how, because his rifle season ends for a little while, and then he has to use a bow, and then I think so. He might have had his crossbow that day, but Nate was maybe in eighth grade at this time. Um, Tad and his buddy had come into Pigeon River off Sturgeon Valley Road and had set up in that area. I said right off next to the road. They were going to camp there for opening day, so that they were hunting. And I don't like opening day in the woods because it's packed on state land, and it's too much. And I'm always afraid I'm gonna get shot. Um, so again, there's people everywhere out there. It just really sucks. Um, so they were gonna hunt, and they were setting up camp, and so I took Nate out, and we went down that two track down that big hill I was telling you about, and parked at the bottom of it. And he was in his little pop up tent thing, and I was just sitting in the open off on kind of like the corner so I could see it. And I had my bow. So I mean, I don't have much luck of shooting anything. I'd see a lot of things, but far off, you have to be pretty close with a bow. And it's a compound bow. So 30 yards, 40 yards would probably be too much. So I'm just sitting there under a tree, enjoying how beautiful it is. And it's hunting, and the coyotes start going off. And they're going off to the opposite side. Like, so if Nate's facing this way, I'm kind of facing this way. They're over here, and they're just really going off in a way I've never heard before. And they are insane. And Nate texts, and I can see the back of Nate's coop from where I'm at too. Like, again, I stay close to him. And he He's like, Mom, can we go? And I'm like, no, we'll wait till dark. Um, Not yet. Give it 20 minutes.
Damn kids.
And I was going to start trying to like record it on my phone, the coyotes howling, because it was so cool and I wanted to show my students at school how cool it sounded. Um, but just then, off, so I'm in this island type thing, and there's a little strip of field before it opens to the big field, and then there's the woods on this side. Um, Off to the side, I hear what my brain tells me is a siren. And immediately my brain is saying, oh no, a hunter must have fallen out of their tree stand. Like, and it's like, "Woo," and it gets louder and louder. And then like as fast as that thought came, I'm like, there's no roads over there. There's not an ambulance out there. I thought it was an ambulance, but then I was like, it's weird. It sounded like an air horn from like wartime. Those
And you're nowhere near the grayling facility.
No, no, we're in Pigeon River, and so like a bunch of thoughts all at once, like ambulance, somebody's injured. Oh no! To how could an ambulance get back there? There's no roads back there. It's all woods there for a
Yeah.
long, long way, and it sounded very close. And so it keeps getting louder. The coyotes are just going insane. The siren thing is going off, and it's getting higher and higher and higher and higher pitched. And it ended kind of like with this big, wah, like it changed. And I jumped up with my pack and my bow. I I'm like grab Nate, and he's standing up and he's got his gun, and just leave the coop, leave the chair, whatever, leave it, leave it. And so he's like, "What was that?" I'm like, "I don't know," but the coyotes shut up when that happened.
Oh,
I
yeah.
never did get to record it. Um, so we're hauling it back. We just have maybe 120 yards back to the truck, but it's through like this. I think Tag calls it a CRP field where the DNR plants it. So they plant like all this tall. I don't know what it is that the elk eat, but it's rutted from all the elk prints in this field. It's hard to walk in. The what the elk eat is long. It kind of tangles around your feet. So we're hauling as fast as we can. It's not quite dark yet. And I drove a Trailblazer, and we opened the Trailblazer, and I'm like a safety first kind of girl, but I just throw my bow in. I grab his gun, put it on the seat. He jumps in, and I'm like flooring it in reverse and hoping to God my Trailblazer makes it up that hill. And we get up to the top of the hill, and I'm like, oh, thank God we made it. Like, because the hill was really steep. And usually I'd have to put it in four wheel and make sure I could get it up that hill, and maybe. And Nate looks at me and is like, that wasn't a coyote. And I just remember Nate was younger, and I didn't like cuss in front of him at that time. And I said basically the same thing I said to Tad, like when the day when he goes, "Did you hear that?" And I swore to my son. I remember I swore to Nate, and I felt so bad because it came right out of my mouth. And we drove up the trail to where Tad and his buddy were setting up their camp. And it was 3/4 of a mile because we've since clocked it, 3/4 of a mile away. And we get out, and the guys are like, "Hey," and I'm like, "Did you hear it?" And they're like, "Yeah." What was it? And his buddy's like, "It had to have been an elk. It had to have been." I'm like I was terrified. I was like, "That is not an elk. Have you ever heard an elk bugle? That is definitely not an elk." And they could hear the coyotes going off too, and they were pretty freaked out. And that was a big one. I don't know. I think that one affected me more than the first one when Tad and I got screamed at.
Have you, admittedly, you go down the rabbit hole, and
Hmm.
have you come across recordings that are similar to what you heard?
Um, yeah, I guess I can't say like if it sounded like the Ohio howl or it just to me the initial sound was like a siren. I thought it was a siren,
Yeah.
and it just but but an old fashioned siren, like
Yeah, like World War II,
yeah. Hmm.
UK.
It just started. I just remember all these weird thoughts went through my head, but I was like, wait a minute, I'm in the middle of the forest. There's no way an ambulance would be in there. If somebody was injured, they'd have to like send people out with stretchers to, you know, through there to get to them. So that was really really scary. I don't really remember anything else right after that. Um, Sometime later, we still hunted that field, the island field. We haven't for like 2 to 3 years now because the DNR came through and blocked off the trail to get down there.
Why
And
is that?
so, with like all these root balls and stuff, so we can't get down there anymore.
That seems
Um,
odd.
I know. So people still camp at that area, and you can still walk back in there, but I mean, it's really far. And then to go down that giant hill, if
Mhm.
you were to get something while hunting, like I can't imagine pulling it up that hill.
That
Um,
almost seems. I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist here, but that almost seems kind of
well,
intentional, maybe.
I don't know. I wonder if it's to protect the field. Too many people are out there. We've been out there since we've walked out there. In fact, my tree stand, we for a few years we had a tree stand out even farther into that field, and I had one for a couple years out there, and nothing else weird happened. Well, not in the tree stand days. Um, Trying to think. I don't know exactly when this was, but one day it was a Saturday, and Nate and I were out. And Nate wasn't sitting in the island field that day. Where I said it kind of goes in bottlenecks, and then it opens up to another little area, and then it goes into like a long trail that um, Nate was sitting in a different area farther back, in a little tent. And so I wasn't in the island field either. I don't know why we weren't in the island field that day, but um, I was off to this side in the woods, and there's like a little clearing, and there's a hill, and there's this giant tree, and I like to sit under this giant tree. And I usually am not in like a pop up tent when I'm on the ground. I'm just on the ground. And we were just out there, and nothing too exciting was happening. And Nate was like, "Mom, I need you. Come get." Or I don't know what he said, but Mom, two big brown things walking. And I texted back, "Bigfoot? Cool. I'm on my way." And so I grabbed my stuff and started heading to him. And
Like,
so
was
I'm
that
like,
serious or was that a joke?
no, no, he was serious. He was scared.
No,
And
your response being
yeah, that
Bigfoot?
was my response. Yeah, that was my response. Bigfoot, cool. I'm on my way. Because I was hoping, you're like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
maybe we'll see a Bigfoot. I don't know. Again, I'm like this naive airhead kind of thing when I'm in the woods. All my common sense disappears. Um,
That's not good.
I don't know. I don't know. So I hustle over to where Nate is, and I mean, I had to go through the woods and across this that ruddy field and get to him. So I like let him know I'm coming, and so he's sitting in the coop and looking up at me, kind of wide eyed, and I'm like, "Where? Where did you see this?" And he's like, "Over there." And he pointed. I go, "Just stay there." And I went wandering around. I didn't see anything, and he's like, "Yeah, right in that area." I'm like, "That's funny. That's where that I was that first day when Katie said the." I didn't tell Nate this, but it was when the day Katie had like something's coming in my tent. I was in that area and I was like,
Yeah.
well, just a minute. The squirrels are throwing pieces of bark at me or whatever I had said. Something's throwing pieces of wood chips at me. Um, it was kind of in that area. So we didn't see anything. We didn't hear anything and we left. And that was the end of that. Um, I think it was maybe the,
He
huh?
ever did he ever like give you a description of what he was seeing?
No, I asked him yesterday because I knew I was going to mention this. And he says, I don't really remember, Mom. I don't really remember. He remembers the scream better and how terrifying it was, but he says he doesn't really remember. So it might have been the next day, it might have been the following weekend. And Tad was with us this time. And so Tad was taking Nate, and they were going from that valley we park in down the big hill. They were going to go like behind where we normally go. And I went into the big field, and I'm like, I wasn't quite sure where I was going to sit at that time. Um, but when as I'm coming in from where we park, like you kind of walk in a little bit and then you turn, and then there's this big open expanse of this field, and the island is in front of you, and then that bottleneck thing is down here. So I come around the corner of the woods right here, like I'm walking in, field opens up, and I off way back I see something. And to me it looked like it my first thought was like it was a pickup truck with a giant brown house type fort built on top of it. And I remember being like, what the? And then I kind of went down a little dip, and I couldn't see it again for a minute. And I'm like, it's got to be a truck. They must have just gotten an elk or something. It must be somebody that has an elk permit, and they got a truck in here somehow. And so I go up the little, and I look again, and there's absolutely nothing there. There's absolutely nothing there. And I actually walked all the way back there and walked around, and there's nothing there. And so I sat
No
back in that
tire
same area.
tracks, nothing to indicate that it could have been there. And when you
I
lost sight of it, it moved.
like, yeah, I had there's no. I don't know if it was, I just remember feeling like it was a big brown truck with a big brown like house thing. It was just this massive thing was back there, and we'd been back there so many times at this point.
So, like, describe what made you say like it had a house on it?
I don't. I
Was
just felt like it.
did it go to a peak at the top of it,
I don't know.
or is
I don't
that
fully
perce-
remember.
that perception that you had of a truck with a house on top of it,
Yeah, it
is that
like a
like
fort,
completely?
dark brown, weird. It would have been way too high, obviously, if it was like some weird hunting stand or something. It would have been way too high for a truck to be able to drive with something like that in it. I don't know what it was. I don't know. I saw something, but then I walked back all the way back there, and so I sat where Nate was the day he said, "Hey, two big brown things,"
Yeah.
and I sat there, and the only thing that happened that it was really windy that day, and I remember I smelled a skunk, and I was like, "Oh no, oh no!" I think it was a skunk. I didn't think it was like I know Bigfoot supposedly have a smell,
Mhm.
but I thought it was a skunk, and that was my only fear is that had that funny smell blow in for a little bit during. It was so windy, and we didn't stay very long that day. Nate and the guys just were like, "It's too windy to be in their coop."
So, I'm not trying to belabor the whole truck with the house on it thing.
Yeah.
How far from it were you?
Um, I wish Tad was here. He's better at that stuff. Um, two football fields, maybe two and a half.
Okay, and from the time that you first saw it, and you were like, "That don't fucking make sense."
I don't know. It was just real brief, but I'm the person that will walk up to people in the woods. And so I was like so excited. My first thought was like somebody must have gotten an elk or something and they're hauling it out. Like,
But if you,
but
but
I only had just a few seconds to think that.
yeah,
And I was going to go ask. I was going to go be nosy because I talk to everybody.
and I guess the roundabout point that I'm getting at is if you were able to see that from your vantage point, then clearly you would have been within vision of whatever that was.
Yeah, because that was higher. It was on higher ground. And plus, it was up way up. It was big. I mean, if something was looking, because I could walk in right next to the trees, so there's like, because it's all planted up high, and so the very edge along the trees is probably the best place to walk,
Mhm.
where because it's a planted field. I don't know
So
what it.
many things about your experiences
Mm-hmm.
tend to like fall into, I'm not going to say misidentification, but more altered perception,
Mm-hmm.
which is
It's like a
very,
state of confusion.
which is, you know, maybe the words I'm using don't make it seem to fall into that category, but when you've dug into it as much as I have and talked to a number of people who have had these experiences, that is a very common component to most people's experiences is at some point there being something that doesn't make sense. Like what's going through your brain about what's happening at that moment doesn't make sense.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
What do you think that is? I guess are we through the your experiences?
No.
No? Okay. All right. Then I'll
Mm,
save then I'll save my question for
I have two
what
more little tales.
what you think is going on.
Um, we had another day that Nate and Tad and I were hunting in that island field. Nate was in his usual spot in the island facing the field. I was on the side, sitting on like the side of the island facing the other woods, and
Mhm.
Tad went with his tree stand out further again, wherever he goes. And I was really excited because I could hear movement in the woods. And I had my bow with me at the time. It was bow season. And I was just so excited, like, yes, because if something comes out of the woods right here, this because you only can shoot so far again with the bow. I had a good chance because it sounded like it was going to come right into the field by me in this little narrow section of field, and Nate wouldn't be able to see it and get it with his gun. Um, and it was Tad, and I was so mad. I was like, "What are you doing?" So he sneaks up by me, cuts across the little section of field, comes up by me. He goes, "I just got growled at." He goes, "I just got in my tree, and something growled at me." And I'm like, "No." And he's like, "Yeah." He goes, "Let's go." And I'm like, "We can't go. We just got Nate all the way out here. We got an hour and a half till dark." He goes, "I'm going to get in the truck." And he said, so he did. And we hunted, nothing happened the rest of the night. But when on the ride home, he said it was kind of like a lion's, like that, grrr, that kind of growly sound.
Yeah.
And I think he said he heard it twice, but he had just gotten into his thing and it was that low rumble, like growl. And it unnerved him enough that he went and sat in the truck.
Okay, so obviously you and your husband spend a lot of time in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
You hunt a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what is out there as far as large game? Um,
Elk, bear, deer.
do any of those do any of those things exhibit that kind of
Um, a
behavior?
cougar could. I think a cougar could if there was a cougar out there, but we hadn't heard any reports of that being out there yet. This was a few years back. Um, so I don't know. An elk definitely wouldn't do that. So he didn't. It unnerved him a little bit. Didn't see anything. Nobody saw anything. The last thing I was going to mention was Our family also bear hunts. Um, the kids, being tribal, have gotten bear tags more than once, and both my kids have gotten a bear. Tad got a bear tag too one year, and he got a bear. So we have this bear spot that we hunt, and we call it the spooky forest because it's just
God.
it's we have names for everything. So we hunt in the spooky forest, which is also in Pigeon River, and it's far. There's like another 25 minutes further in to the forest from where all this other stuff had happened. And one day we were driving out there, and we weren't going to walk into the spooky forest. We were just driving past it, and like Ted had built this hut out there that Nate and Katie, we would deer hunt and stuff in. But we were driving past it because there's another one of those fields that is planted by the DNR, and sometimes when you can go up there, you see the nice big elk, and it's just really pretty. So we drive past where the spooky forest is, and you just go down this trail, and then it opens up into one of those big fields, and the trail would line it like this. And so the woods is really thick for a few minutes. It's not very long. And then we go in, and I'm ready, like on the edge of my seat, hoping to see the elk because we just really enjoy that. And I see something big walking right next to the woods on the far side of that field. And I yelled out, "Stop the bleeping truck." And so Ted stops, and right there's like a rock pile, and with all this greenery shrubs. And I go, "Move, move, move, move!" Like I was frantic.
Blocking your view.
And yeah, block my view. And so he pulled back, and then it was gone. But what I saw was like this huge back, and this one is like more than any of the other ones. I would say that would have been a Bigfoot. It was like this reddish color, and the grass was pretty high, but it was this big back with a bump for a head. And I remember it was black down the center of the back, and I was like, is that its skin or is that its fur? So I see this, and yeah, I was excited. I was cussing. By the time Ted pulled up, which was only a second later, it was gone. And I'm like, get in that field, get in the field. So he drove up into the field and drove right up to where we saw it. I got out and everything. We didn't see anything.
Did he see it as well?
No, I'm the only one that saw it. I think Nate was with us too. And so that one, I truly believe what I saw that day was.
How far do you think you were away from it?
80 yards, maybe.
Oh, so close.
It was off at an angle, and it was I just remember like big bulky shoulders, big bulky orangish shoulders, a little bump on top, and like a black stripe down the center. Like it needed its hair dyed. Or was that its skin? Like the
Yeah.
roots. That's
Right. Yeah.
So that happened. And other things have happened, like we found structures, and we've found weird bent trees and weird things kind of all around, but I'm always looking, always
Now,
watching.
any of the conferences or get-togethers that I've ever seen you at, your husband is always there with you.
Yeah.
So I would assume that either one, he's a very good husband and he's just humoring you, or there's a significant interest.
Oh, definitely a significant interest. Like he's the one that was a believer in the beginning. I wasn't. So now I'm always looking. I'm always asking, anything weird happen out there? I bartend in the summer, and sometimes people come and they're like, "Oh yeah, we were working out near Camp Grayling on some oil wells or like stuff." Anything weird happen? I'm always asking, and then if I say the word Bigfoot, I get laughed at. And
That's funny you mention oil wells.
Yeah.
because I'm currently working on what could end up being a series. Um, a gentleman that I first met at the Ohio Bigfoot Conference the first year I was there. Um, he, they drive tankers that remove water from oil pads
Okay.
in Pennsylvania and Virginia. And so far, he has given me contact information for, I believe, 8 or 9 drivers that are all too scared to go because usually they have to. It's a one man crew. Um, they go to these pads in the evening in the dark. They're all very remote, and they're all reporting things walking around the outside of the pads, just outside of being able to see, just far enough outside of however far their headlights or their headlamps cast any light. That's a strange,
Mm-hmm.
probably more related to being remote rather than anything to do with oil. But
Yeah, those oil things are pretty close behind my house too. And I don't even know if it was like the oil fields that when I talked to those guys, they were working on something and they were outside and they were there for a month. I can't remember what they were. I mean, they were working on whatever. But those oil things are behind my house, and nothing happens behind my house in Gaylord.
I guess that would be should be happy for that. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah, I
are you happy about that, or would you rather have?
I don't know. I just don't want my dogs to get hurt if anything were to be out there. Um, when Tad first started coming in my life, because I'm Tad's my second husband. Our bonfire pit used to be back off our property a little farther into the woods, and it's since been moved it up closer into the yard. But we were out there having a bonfire, and we heard some movement back there. And at the time, I just assumed it was these high school kids that tend to harass us, and because I'd ask them to drive slow because I had little kids in the neighborhood. But we heard movement back there by the bonfire pit by us, and we went inside. But I just always assumed it was those snarky high schoolers that were
Mhm.
ignorant. But that's the only like there was a supposedly a sighting not too far from our house years ago, like long time ago, 60s, maybe near an outhouse or something on Hayes Tower Road, which is kind of just behind my road, but a long time ago. So I don't feel like there's really anything by my house. But I'm always watching, always interested, always listening, looking.
You know, you kind of threw some shade at and rightfully so at the the TV shows, Finding Bigfoot and all that stuff earlier in the conversation. And
Oh, we loved them.
I mean, even though I don't think they've done anything to progress the legitimate research or investigation into this, they were entertaining, and if nothing else, at least got people more interested in the topic. Um, I just I just finished the most recent season of Expedition Bigfoot last night,
Okay.
and it's anytime you have anytime you're able to talk to people who have been doing research in this, and you've seen that they've been in this for 40 years, 50 years, 35 years, and the very small amount of things that they have come up personally experienced that have continued to keep them in the subject. when you watch a TV show that seems to get some kind of significant uh, experience in each episode, it's kind of makes it hard to believe. Not saying anybody would go out and do anything nefarious like faking it, uh, but I think that I think those shows do encourage people to start doing their own research, start heading down the rabbit hole themselves rather than just paying attention to those shows.
Hmm. I love those shows, but I don't know. I'm not out there in the middle of the night either. I'm too scared
Yeah.
to be out there, so I don't I don't go out there.
But yet you're not
So I'm not going to find anything out in the middle of the night, right?
yet you're not afraid to continue to go out hunting. You know, so many times
Right.
you hear people who have hunted, you know, it cracks me up because like, you know, I've hunted my whole life. Well, you know, that equates to a couple of weeks every year.
Hmm.
You know, even if you're going after multiple species, you're still you haven't been in the woods your whole life.
Right.
Um,
I've still never gotten a buck. It's been a lot of years. I've still never gotten a buck. I've gotten 3 doe. That's it.
what would you attribute the weirdness that your entire family? I mean, because both children,
Hmm.
yourself, your husband, you've all had experiences out there.
Hmm. Well, I think there's something out there. I don't. I don't know.
Do
Is
you
it
put do
like,
you
can
put
it be an energy thing that can distort you? Like, I haven't heard this word in quite some time, but zapping. I remember when I first heard about zapping, I'm like, is that what happened to me that day? Everything, when I was in my tree stand, I was like, everything changed behind me. Did I get zapped? Like, is that really a thing? I haven't heard a lot of people talk about that in a while.
well that used to be a common term,
Yeah,
and
I
and
don't know.
even I'm sorry,
I just said I don't know. I'm curious. I don't know what it is.
but that was the word that finally came to my mind about 3 or 4 days after the experience I had during the interview with the witch.
Mm-hmm.
And it hit me out of the clear blue. I was like, holy shit, that's what they were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And then, like, when I took into consideration the lack of sound that I recorded on my equipment, but with as bombastic and as loud and as um, abrupt of a reaction that I had to it when it happened, then it started leading me down the path of the way it affected me made me think that I heard something, but it was more of a physical reaction to it. So, like the whole idea behind um, infrasound and that wave of chills that I got would, you know, it was really prevalent, and then it kind of backed off a little bit, and then it kind of came back, only it wasn't quite as strong, and then, like I said, 3 or 4 days later, it finally hit me. It's like it was almost like um, a static charge that the first time it hit me, it was like really strong, and then the next time it wasn't quite as strong, and then not. And I'm like, that's what people are talking about when they say they've been zapped.
Mm-hmm. I wasn't sick or anything after that experience. I know sometimes I've read that
Hmm.
people get sick after
I
those
wasn't either, but
experiences.
I do I do think it would be safe to say that it was disorienting for me, and and it put two very strange thoughts in my into my mind. Immediately when it happened, I thought, I left my gun out in my car. Immediately. And then right after that, the thought was, shit, I've got 40 pounds of dog food in my back seat. And I'm like, why? Why would that? I mean, that shouldn't have anything to do with.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's strange. So where's your head at with everything that you guys have, the weirdness that you've experienced?
Well, I
Where's your head?
definitely believe there's Bigfoot. I definitely believe there's more than one Bigfoot. Um, like people at my school know, they don't know in detail, but they know that I believe in Bigfoot. My classroom is decorated with Bigfoot.
Mm.
Um, but so every once in a while, someone will ask me something, and then it's always comical to me because then they'll be like, "Oh, so you think there's more than one?" And it just I kind of want to slap them and like, I really do now, but at the beginning I didn't. I mean, I thought there could only be two, and that's why we moved to this other location, you know. And I thought we were away from it, but yeah, it's just interesting. I definitely believe they're out there. I truly believe that there's aliens out there. I believe in spirits. I believe in all that stuff. I don't know with the Bigfoots. I love the idea that they're a native tribe
Mhm.
or um,
That's where my head sits.
I love that, but at the same time, I feel like they have a little something something that we
I
don't
don't
have.
disagree. I don't disagree.
There's something there.
Yeah, I'm not one who shies away from the more supernatural aspects
Yeah,
or paranormal aspects
I
of.
I like the Ron Moorhead ideas
Mhm.
and that stuff. And why did something disappear behind me, or was I just in a state of shock, or I don't know. Someday I'm going to get hypnotized. Um,
I'm glad you brought that back up.
I want to get hypnotized. I have been hypnotized 3 times, like for stress, like for that. But so I know I am able to be hypnotized. And I talked to the lady about like, have you ever done any of that like past life regression kind of thing or Bigfoot things? And she just kind of was like, no, nope, haven't done any of that. So I'm like, okay, so you're not the lady for me. But I didn't say that.
Well,
Um,
maybe finding somebody who wouldn't have any predisposition to would be the best
yeah,
for you, because I mean, so the thing that, as far as hypnotism goes, um or regressive therapy, I guess you'd call it maybe more accurately these days. um you don't want to be led
right.
by their questioning. Um you don't want their perception to plant anything false,
That's true.
right? So maybe somebody with no predisposition to belief in or against it might be the better way to go.
Yeah. I don't know.
So if you did decide that you're going to do this, what would be 3 things that you would want to focus on?
I want to see what was behind that tree when I was in the tree stand.
Behind you? Yeah.
I'd want to re-see the two hunters slash big black deer.
That's still so strange that you referred to them
Yeah,
as,
I know.
in your brain you saw a father and a son, but then you messaged your husband they were black deer.
Is I want to know, where are they? Where do they live? Are they safe? Do they hate when we're in the woods hunting? Do they, like I don't know. And I'm going to be in the woods a lot starting next week because in Gaylord we have an elk herd that is, um, it's like in a viewing area downtown, and big, huge open area, and they have like little, is it called fallow deer and the elk, and they're in this thing, and there's like a nature walk around, nature trail out there, but you can drive up and see the elk too. And I've been checking every day for them to be dropping their antlers, and just 2 days ago I drove up and there I saw an antler on the ground. I was like, yes, this time. So I'll be doing lots of hiking in the woods here in the coming weeks, before the ticks come out, to look for antlers. I found some in the past, so I'll be back out there, and maybe something else weird will happen. I'm mindful. I look at tracks. I look at bent trees and structures and listen to everything.
But nothing's really I guess from like listening to your whole arc encompassing any of the experiences you've had, you're still not afraid to go back out in the woods.
No,
So
I'm
many
not.
so many other people that even have a benign experience just witnessing, seeing something walking through the woods, and they're like, I'm done. I don't want to be out there anymore.
I don't like to go into the woods in the dark anymore. It used to not phase me at all. Um, and I don't sit till dark anymore. Um, when I had my bear permit, for example, and we'd go into the spooky forest, I would always turn on my camera to record, and I'd record the whole walk in case I walked up on something or in case something screamed at me again. And then nothing happened. Delete. There's a 20-minute um, video. I would make it, and just in case, because I missed that big howl or that big scream. The time with my son, because I was about to record all the coyotes going off. Um, it sucks because so much stuff has happened. I would love to catch some of it
Hmm.
sometime. I just remembered too, one other time I was hunting in a different area in Pigeon River, and it was very cold and it was very windy, and I was up on top of a ridge, a hill, and there was this big old tree way down at the end. And I remember when I first was walking into where I was going to go sit that day, there was a really loud thud on the tree, and all of a sudden, so many of the leaves came off the tree. A branch didn't break or anything, but it was just so many leaves. Like the wind was blowing the leaves off all of the trees, but after that big like thud, it was like tons and tons of leaves came off. So I just always also wondered about that one. Did something hit that tree and make those, or did something jump out of that tree? Or
Yeah.
I don't know. That was just one more thing that just popped in my head that happened.
It's funny that you say jumping out of the tree because it's so many of the accounts, the reports, people who have had experiences, everything is ground based, right?
Hmm.
Um, but yet, based on based on the morphology of many of the footprints, castings, and handprints that have been found on windows, um, extremely big, 13-inch handprints with a very short thumb, and that is very primate like and usually suggests arboreal behavior, meaning being in the trees. I had an interesting conversation with a gentleman once, and I think I think the conversation started with speaking as to the trackways, how their footprints seem to always be one right in front of the other, whereas we kind of you could put a 2x4 between the way we walk, and there's always a little bit of space. Um, Whereas theirs are one directly in front of the next.
Hmm.
And he said that's because as juveniles they spend the vast majority of the time in the trees. So muscle memory, they're walking across branches for the beginning parts of their lives, just like walking across the balancing beam. So their natural progression of how they walk as they grow up continues to be in a straight line. Not many people talk about things in the trees. I wonder if we spent a little bit more time looking up.
If Ted was here, he'd laugh because I do spend time looking up because my biggest fear in the woods is a cougar's going to eat me. And so when we hunt in the
Not a
spooky
Bigfoot, a
forest,
cougar.
no, a cougar. I don't want to be eaten by a big cougar. And so in the spooky forest where we bear hunt, on the way in, there's these two ginormous trees, and I call them the cougar trees. And I can't go by them until I stop and look up and make sure there's not. They're just huge, and like what you would see in a movie where the cougar jumps out of the tree and
Yeah.
takes out the person. So yeah, that's a bigger fear. Is I don't want to be eaten by a cougar.
So I know that you've been a part of a group. Um,
The West Branch group.
yeah,
Hmm.
started by Phil Shaw, God rest his soul.
Hmm.
Um, do you go out on, I don't know if you want to call them expeditions or research
Um,
nights?
I went out with Phil Shaw and Sherry Barcia and Tad and myself one night, and they drove to Pigeon River, and we took them to that area where I had said I'd seen the big brown truck with the hut,
Hmm.
and where Nate had seen the two big brown things walking. So we kind of sat out there. We didn't stay really long. We were just out there for a few hours. We had explored other areas, and we just sat out there for a while. And he had a night vision, and Sherry tried doing some calls, and um, it was an uneventful evening. And then only one other time I went on a camp out with them, and but I ended up getting sick in the night, and we ended up leaving. Ted and I left at like 4 a.m., 3 a.m. I don't know. I just wasn't feeling good. But we did a hike, but in the daylight still, and they collected hairs off of power lines, and I'm trying to remember who was at that one. Daniel Perez was there,
Oh, that was
And Ken Gerhardt, I believe.
yeah, that was um, the night at the night of when I hosted the town hall. That
Yes, it was. Because we chatted that day.
Yep.
Yep. I do remember that. Yeah, so we camped out that night, but that's the only times I've done it. Like I said, I got sick, and I didn't go off in the middle of the night like everybody else did. Like Ted and I stayed back at the camp and just listened, and we were just there for some adventure. But everybody else had been there lots of times and had been out to these areas and stuff. So I didn't know any of these areas. That's the only time I've ever camped out to try to find anything. Like, and I didn't really try.
have you, like, with going down the rabbit hole with your experiences and looking into the topic more and more, have you ever utilized like the BFRO or the Bigfoot Mapping Project to see if there's additional reports that have been in your area or the
I
areas of where you've hunted?
No, not really, but I do have a friend. I won't say his name on here. Um, that I met because one summer Tad and I were making those big wooden cutouts of Bigfoot, and
Hmm.
we were selling them on Marketplace. And this man offered to do a trade with my husband. He does that metal art, so he traded us the big wooden Bigfoot for a piece of the metal Bigfoot art. Anyway, I talked to him the day he delivered it in the driveway, and he said that he had some experiences in Pigeon River, and it's probably been a couple of years, 3 years maybe. he and I occasionally send messages back and forth about things that we've heard or interesting stories we see online. And I just recently said, we really have to get together, he and his wife and Tad and I, for a bonfire and just sit and talk. Because that guy goes out hunt or camping by himself out in the Pigeon River. He'll go for night walks. Um, he did tell me a story. Um, I was really desperate to try to get in touch of it because before Phil passed away, Phil Shaw, he was trying to get me to start like a group of doing interviews of people who had experiences.
Yeah.
And he had like kind of divided up the map, and from where I live, he wanted me to be in charge of like this area to interview people. So I remember this person told me he had heard a story about where someone near our area, a prominent figure in our local area, was knocked off a dirt bike by a Bigfoot. And he said he heard the story, heard the guys talking wherever he was, but he didn't get the name of who it was. And I was like, you're going to have to find out, because if I actually get the courage to do this thing that Phil Shaw wants me to do, he's going to be the first person I have to talk to. But so I've never heard anything else about that, but I haven't forgotten.
Interesting.
And
I had gotten an email from a gentleman. Um, never never gave me permission to use the email. Um, Declined wanting to come on the show. But in the email, he sent me a video of himself recreating a drive on a motocross bike through a path that he had taken when he was a much younger man and was knocked off of his bike by a Sasquatch.
yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't know too many people around our town that are into Bigfoot. I mean, I have a friend who likes it. When I first started, like 2011, I had the bumper stickers, and I had like the little family of bumper stickers of Bigfoot and stuff on my vehicle. And back then, I was like the only one. And now, no matter where you look, every car has 4 Bigfoot stickers on it, and
Right.
they're sold in every gas station. They're everywhere. So I remember one of the first times I ever was in the woods, and I went to park, and there was another truck parked kind of near, and they had a Sasquatch sticker, and I'm like, so I assumed it back. I remember thinking, they have to be a Bigfooter. I wonder who it is. Like, only a Bigfooter would put a Bigfoot sticker on. But now those stickers are everywhere, and
So much a part of pop culture now.
oh yeah, absolutely, it's come a long way. So I don't know, but I'll keep you posted if anything else exciting happens, and
Please do. Now that you've got this under your belt,
I
it
got to get it under my belt.
shouldn't be any big deal.
Right. It shouldn't be. Nerve wracking, though. I did it, though.
You did. You did great too.
Thank you.
Nobody would. I don't think anybody would ever think that you were under duress.
Well, I was when I got up this morning. I was like, I have to just do it so I can say it's done and not fret about it anymore.
Yeah,
It's been a long time.
that is a long time to hold on to something like that.
It is. Yeah.
Well, I hope the experience was good for you.
It was. I feel good.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Um, more more than I expected, and some very interesting stuff. I mean, you put check marks in a lot of boxes. I think a lot of people are going to recognize some strong similarities to other things they've heard.
Hmm.
Tater, thanks so much.
Thank you, Eric.
It's great seeing you. Pleasure talking with you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.